If there's one thing that we love on this channel, it is Elden Ring and or Souls games. And today we're going to be checking out Max0r's Bloodborne review, Defeat Gods Doll Waifu Simulator. My understanding is that Max0r does highly edited content that has a lot of cuts in it. I've never watched anything from him before, but I've heard that it's quite funny. And there's really nothing better to start with than something that I already know a lot about and care about. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
Bloodborne is a Lovecraftian horror RPG that no one understands by definition, where the player is free to attack hordes of human children at will and consume their innards. If that in-depth...
Okay, already we got a lot of cuts. It is so fucking weird that you consume an umbilical cord to get the quote-unquote true ending in this game. I don't know what these guys were smoking when they made this, but like... it was good.
Depth and engaging anti-baby gameplay appeals to you. Keep listening because it gets worse. In this game, you play as John Bloodborne, a foreigner incapable of speech without the use of sign language and stricken with Habsburg disease.
What a perfect place to pause it. Holy shit, that YMCA cut though, peak. Oh my god, I feel like this is maybe gonna give you a headache with how many cuts it has, but it's great so far.
Comes to the ancient city of London, seeking treatment for the sins of his cousins. In doing so, he will begin hallucinating talking dolls, spider people, and the great people. Journeying further, John Bloodborne becomes conscripted into the service of a gay elder god in the...
there are worse fates.
60-year-old man he keeps as a pet, and is given the ultimate task of killing an invisible infant in order to cure his anemia. To accomplish said Herculean task, the player must journey through dark forest.
Honestly, I feel like they just made the baby invisible because it would be like some sort of ratings problem if you actually killed a visible infant. I'm almost certain that that's why.
Terrifying nightmares, and the meth-ridden alleyways of a post-Brexit Britain, slaying monsters, exploring, and tricking women into being impregnated by gods so you can consume the child. This game is an excellent realization of a Metroidvania with something new around every corner. A great action RPG which...
okay, I actually don't think it counts as a Metroidvania. I feel like a key element of Metroidvanias is that you gain new abilities in order to traverse the world, and you absolutely don't do that in any Souls-like, but holy shit. Listen, so far, he's just straight spitting facts. There's nothing inaccurate about this.
Pits you against insurmountable odds and extreme challenges, and has a gripping story and lore about discovering the eldritch truth. So if you can, play it yourself, because I'm not going to hold back on the details. It's no secret that my reviews are entertainment first, so I don't suggest using me as genuine advice.
Well...
however, most people can't play this game, ever, because you have to buy a $400 magical box sold by the wizard Sony in order to experience it. And even then, you get to see it in an amazing 30 frames per second with...
okay, but like, it is on the PlayStation Store. You can... I played it on stream like this last year. It is 30 FPS, though. It sucks.
No anti-aliasing. Port this game to PC, I beg of you. In fact,
please.
I can assume that a lot of people watching this video will basically never play the game. But keep watching, because I'm hilarious and original. Do that, and I can give you the full, unfiltered, uncensored, unsubstantiated, and unsportsmanlike experience that is Bloodborne.
Also, I'm just going to pause here really quick because I love the Persona 5 soundtrack. I never played any Persona games before Persona 5, and I mostly just played it because it was free with PlayStation 5. Holy, what a great decision that was. Music also is peak, but the game is great.
The gameplay is what makes this game great, and the easiest way to describe it is simple but complicated. On a simple level, your baby brain is responsible for only two tasks, dodging and hitting. And dodging in this game renders you temporarily invincible. Sounds easy, right? Wrong,
for a third of a second,
because every single enemy is adjusted to keep pace with you. Basic enemies are basically able to whoop your ass into fucking non-existence. Every encounter, therefore, is tense and engaging. When you kill someone, it's because you were faster and had more meth than they did. On a complicated...
okay, true though. You actually legitimately take drugs in this game to buff yourself and give yourself resistances to stats. I will say that the description of simple but complicated, I would actually say that it is simple but difficult. It's actually not that complicated. For that exact reason. There really is mostly just dodging and attacking and like learning the right time to do it. There's not a lot of crazy hidden effects that are going on, or like complicated ability synergies or anything like that. You have legitimately like 3 buttons to attack: light weapon, heavy weapon, and like parry. And that's it. The Souls games are not complicated. They are difficult, but at their heart, they are kind of simple.
Complicated level, you have a gun, and normally bullets hurt people, but in London, bullets are a suggestion, like the Geneva Convention. Here in England, it's all about the knife bins, except when you shoot someone with an attack, you gain the mystical and arcane ability to plunge your fist through their ribcage like Mortal Kombat, and rip out their heart, which is considered
harder, Daddy.
A slight annoyance. This extends to behind them if you...
Okay, listen. I literally just made a YouTube short about why everybody is convinced that I'm gay from my YouTube shorts, and I don't know why, and then here I am just literally saying fist me daddy. Okay, maybe I get it a little bit.
If you charge an attack, which sometimes causes you to reach up a pig's asshole and rip out the prostate like fruit by the foot. Side note, the most optimal farming route for currency in this game is called Murgo's Pig Fisting Route. See, I changed the webpage. And in this route, you sneak up behind this guy and do him the dirty. Then entice these 2 swinular bastards to be mauled to death by members of Organization 13. Repeat 50 times. On a complicateder level, every single weapon in the game has 2 different modes with 2 different movesets. And transforming between them gives you special attacks, in addition to running attacks, plunging attacks,
Okay, all of that is true, but there's only like 20 total weapons in this game. It's not that crazy.
On a theoretical physicist level, your character memorizes squiggly lines and fridge art created by gods for passive
fridge art from gods.
Weaponry. My favorites are more money, and more money they stack. Finally, on a meta-theoretical chiropractic level, every weapon is customizable with different gem slots that give differing effects for your attacks. And there are different types that can literally change all of the stats of the weapon, like making a fucking spear do more damage based off of intelligence. There's definitely more and a lot of strategy in how you level up your character, but I assume that you know how to level up in a fucking video game. But with all this combat prowess, you may be wondering, Max0r, who are these crusty abominations that you're fighting on screen? Well, to learn that much, we're going to have to delve into the lore. So buckle your britches, bitches, because this shit is wild. If I say something questionable, just accept it as fact. I can be trusted. 60 years ago, 20 rowdy college students took their education extremely seriously because they found woman Cthulhu. She was just in a portable toilet downstairs. Also, because they were bored, they beat to death a god of the sea with some bats, but that's a story for later. It turns out the entire world is ruled and created by a race of elder gods beyond human comprehension called the Great Ones. Figuring this out, they got Cthulhu's blood and were like, we can make a religion out of this. Because
I mean, honestly, in the year 2025, I'm more and more convinced that that is actually the story of the human world. Like, we are rapidly descending into a sort of chaotic doom spiral towards the annihilation of our entire species. Listen, praying to the Elder Ones, there are worse ideas.
Because it turns out the blood can heal people, which is really good due to all the knife crime. So everyone starts drinking it a little too much and they get the money to build 36 cathedrals. But it turns out eventually the blood turns you into a werewolf. So the church hires a guy named German to go fight the beasts with an organization known as the Hunters. But there's too many beasts, so he gives up. Now the knife crime is increased even more, and German sort of goes insane and creates a life-size doll of one of his students who is an 8-foot tall.
Totally not creepy. Don't worry about it.
Amazonian. He also canonically has sex with it. The moon god, for some reason, kind of takes notice of this and is like, all right, listen, I'm building a suicide
Not the
squad.
Megumin body pillow.
Waifu to Laifu if you serve me for all time as my slave. German reasonably thinks that this is a great deal and is imprisoned in a dream. This is where
you know what? Offer me that plan. Sign me up.
You come in. See, the moon god assassinates baby gods for fun, but needs a hitman to go into the real world to do it, since he's confined to the 9th dimension. So in addition to fighting all manner of giant beasts and uncovering dark secrets, the true aim of this game is to commit infanticide. There's an
Wait. I've seen that on thumbnails. Hold on, let me
summarized Bloodborne lore below. And for the rest of us not so, comment your own poorly summarized Bloodborne lore below.
Holy crap, that's so fast. Okay, whatever.
And for the rest of us non-shills, we have ample time to explain more of what makes this game great. Yes, you have been jinked. I am talking about bosses before I talk about the levels. In most video games, bosses cap off areas, but in Bloodborne, areas are preambles to a dick flattening, and nothing will challenge your skill in quite...
areas are a preamble to dick flattening. I need to remember that. That is so true, especially in Dark Souls 1. I recently played Dark Souls 1 again for the first time in several years. And God, even though I knew it, I had somewhat forgotten just how agonizingly long some of the runs were back to the bosses. Like the boss was actually getting through 30 guys on the way to the boss with dogs and backstabs and upper level like height advantages to throw bombs at you and knives at you and all that kind of crap. Holy.
The same way, except for the goddamn witches of Hemwick, who were placed into the game for disability access. You can probably tell that Bloodborne is a hard game. We don't even know if a games journalist can beat it, but it's hard in a fair way that tests your skills and reaction time, except for Lawrence, but I'll get back to Lawrence later. What sets this game's bosses apart is that the challenge makes it feel like you're a really small dude jabbing a toothpick into a building-sized deer demon.
Okay, but like actually, also very funny that we put Haruka here. Actually, what makes a lot of these boss fights hard to me is that like the frame rate gets really bad, especially if they have a lot of hair or bandages or things like that, which a lot of the big ones do. So you're dealing with camera issues and you're dealing with frame rate issues. Ooh.
So yeah, I would be impressed if he killed that. But not only that, unlike Dark Souls, every single boss reacts meaningfully to how you attack them. Large beasts can have their bones cracked and their tendons wound into a slinky. Bone boys can be knocked over and have their marrow shipped. And human enemies will wince and recoil when they see your height difference. As well, every boss punishes you for cowardice and actively discourages backpedaling with their forward momentum, causing every fight to be an elaborate dance with a thrilling back and forth. Unless you're fighting Rom, who is the really hungry caterpillar if he had a legion of arachnid slaves who threw their heads underground like ostriches. We don't talk about him. And while we're on the subject...
Okay, that fight does suck. Honestly, the best way to do that fight is to run around it. Run around the spiders and don't even fight them at all, and then just hit Rom in the ass over and over again.
Of bad bosses. This motherfucker, let me tell you something. The humanoid bosses in this game are paradoxically the most dangerous. But Mikolash is a psychological hazard that will hurt you personally. This boss literally feels like cut content because the fight centers around chasing him, and his direction depends on RNG, making him an actual speedrun killer.
His direction does not depend on RNG. You actually can get him to go the right way. You just need to like realize the point at which you need to change your path and go deal with him.
Corner him, he uses one attack, and then you chase him again, where he gains the power to insta-kill you. God forbid you're hit by it, because that's 10 minutes gone. Here's a tip. Save up 10 poison knives and steal from your family if you must. Then wait until he jumps down this hole, poison him repeatedly, and watch him spaz the fuck out until death. You will thank me. But as
Okay, that is good to know, though. This is real advice. I was led to believe that this entire video was going to be a shitpost. This is true. He's just spitting straight facts here.
As a result of everyone who isn't Miko shit, conquering a boss in this game is absolutely rewarding on a level that other games cannot match. It's only because the odds are stacked against you in ways that don't feel bullshit most of the time that conquering them is the main reason I play. Yeah. And their fights are undoubtedly the best I've ever done in video games. But that isn't most of the time in the game. In fact, a lot of your time is spent exploring the areas, so let's get into that. Lesson 1 in area design. Where the fuck am I going? Exploration is the name of the game, except it's called Bloodborne. Only this time, you don't bring smallpox and kill 20 million people. We're looking at a solid 10 this time, because the main enemies in this game are British townspeople. It's how the developers made sure you didn't feel bad about killing them. The plague of
reverse colonialism
causes people's teeth to become beast-like, makes you aggressive at night, and slurs your speech. So it's up to you to stop them, as a hunter should. If you don't look up where to go next in this game, good fucking luck. People get lost all the time. Get used to it. This game doesn't do exploration like, oh look, there's loot in this hallway, my dopamine's gonna go crazy. That's baby shit. This is daddy's exploration, where you find a route back to a place you were in 10 hours ago. And I hope you weren't expecting a mini-map, or any map. Every single hallway is a rabbit hole of discovery, and your hand isn't held. Case in point, Cathedral Ward is a level, but feels like a hub area because it connects to fucking everything. And where you start the game is in...
Yes, it is a hub. Yeah, that is exactly right. You start out only really being able to go 1.5 directions, and then you unlock more directions the more you explore. Yeah, that's true. This is a good map, actually, though. I mean, I think this is probably an official map, or maybe one of the ones from the wiki.
The middle of a loop-de-loop involving torturous experimentation. Just look at the fucking map of this game. Everything overlaps. And yes, there is a level called Nightmare Lecture Hall, and no, it does not connect to the Altar of Despair, although you would think that. Fittingly, the Lecture Hall is the smallest area, and more fittingly, 90% of the combat is graduates throwing cum at you. The game also has 2 completely secret areas that you would not find without the internet. I would tell you how to enter.
Listen, I'm pretty sure that throwing cum is like the standard like attack tactic of most college students.
but I don't want to do calculus. And what you get at the end? Upper Cathedral Ward is legitimately a horror area in a game loved for its combat, because it's filled with enemies who act out my greatest fears. Stealing currency permanently gives me fucking chills every time I talk about it. Castle Canehurst is proof that From Software hates us all, since the best area in the entire game requires you to go to the Field of Corn in Ohio and trek down Waldo. But it's worth it to invade the house of that parasitic queen dwelling in her demented castle, so that she may feel the wrath of the proletariat. All we have to do is kill Prince Philip, who guards the way as an eternal lich. On top of this, there are numerous NPCs and NPC quest lines spread throughout the world, all with a series of interactions with each other depending on location and timing. For instance, you could direct nuns, prostitutes, and Prince Philip to a church run by a lonely black sludge, then perform enough blood transfusions to send the nun into a yandere rage. Or you could direct them to the nice woman who runs the clinic down the street, who only wants to help and assist others. Then take a strange path through the forest and into her clinic to discover that she has been experimenting on all of them in order to create the Blue Man Group. And if you want...
Oops, all bad decisions. No, this is true. This is something about all Souls games that is both so fascinatingly unique to them and also sometimes frustrating, is that you can very much find parts of quest lines and it's not like it's just, did you pay attention? There are legitimately times where you just have to know, like, you just have to know that you have to go backwards somewhere to find the next step, or go somewhere before you go somewhere else. And there's really no quest signposting, and obviously there's no quest log. So it's cool that they make these obtuse things and it adds to replayability. And it's cool that they don't care at all if you miss them, because they are bonus content. But sometimes I wish they had a little bit better signposting. I'm not going to lie.
You can take the umbilical cord away from her schizophrenic ass and eat it. The sky's the limit in Bloodborne questlines. And you know what my favorite questline is? The one where you descend into literal hell, complete with eternal punishment, insanity, and femboy fishing, the scariest of them all. I'm of course talking about the DLC, the only DLC for this game. And if you play through Bloodborne, you have to play through the DLC. I'm not giving...
First time I actually played the DLC was this past year. I just kind of didn't get around to it. It was good though.
Giving you a fucking choice. So to learn why, you should play the best expansion ever made since Spore Galactic Adventures. Come with me on this amazing journey to find the secrets of the Bloodborne, the old hunters.
Okay, hot take. I liked the bosses and did not like the areas in this game because I felt like every single ordinary mob was overtuned on damage. The bosses were standard bosses and were good, but like, god damn.
I want you to imagine hell. Now imagine hell written by H.P. Lovecraft. It would be filled with squids, immigrants, and air conditioning. This DLC has none of that except the squids. For you see, those college kids from the lore section of the video were built fucking different. They experimented on an entire village and possibly beat up a god of the sea so fucking bad that her consciousness in the 9th dimension died. We spent an entire game killing an infant and these guys somehow killed the MILF god. But anyways, in the process...
Not Maureen. Let's go. I love that this guy has hololive references. Well, actually just VTuber references in general.
Process of this, it cursed them and all of the hunters to be doomed to a hell upon death, where they will hunt in a bloodthirsty rage without rest for all eternity, indistinguishable from a political subreddit. Case in point, this is Ludwig. He's the first boss of the DLC and has a reputation for causing refunds. Not because he's bad, but because he's too good for you. The first phase is as difficult for me as realizing that Golden Corral is not actually a real corral. But like every restaurant except Golden Corral, the rewards at the end are delicious because his second phase is even harder. Now, I'm not going to lie, this DLC has 4 bosses and 3...
Okay. I also thought his second phase was easier. I think it's because I think in most Souls games, most players are either better at fighting humanoid enemies or they're better at fighting monstrous enemies. And I'm the type that's much better at fighting humanoid enemies. I find their telegraphs to be a lot easier a lot of the time. And so when you just gave this giant horseman a sword, it made it so much easier to like dodge his attacks when it was a big sword swinging at you than it was when he's flailing around like he's hopped up on cocaine or something.
3 of the hardest bosses I have ever fought in any video game ever. So your ass will be clenched the entire time, and the fact that he's the 3rd hardest is fucking concerning. Some people tell me, Max0r, your videos have gotten me through tough times because they made me laugh. But like this boss, you are the one who is truly overcoming these challenges, and I believe in your ability to beat both of them. King. Boss Lightning Round. The DLC has many such cases of amazing bosses, including Lady Maria, who is the basis for German's
Lady Maria was a
creepy 8-foot tall
fantastic
doll
boss.
fetish, but we'll get back to that. And Orphan of Cause, who was born from the literal dead body of a god. If you enjoy the sensation of being beaten to death with a sharpened placenta, this is the fight for you. And as with everything that From Software makes, they threw in a boss that they didn't really finish and called it a day. I'm of course talking about Lawrence, which is a very mundane name for a fire monster locked in hell. Take my advice, don't fight Lawrence, you only lose a part of yourself, since this boss fights you by dropping off his own legs and then violently vomiting and shitting lava everywhere. I've always wanted my game about dynamic dodging and elaborate fencing to be reduced to shitty area denial like it's Team Fortress 2. To wrap things up, the music of this game is pretty good, but the DLC music is fucking insane. I don't know.
True. The music in all From Software games has always been good, but in their more recent games, it's only gotten better and better. Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, and Elden Ring all have incredible music, especially the boss fight songs. Atmospheric music is also good, but the boss fight songs are legendary. Also mildly triggering.
I don't know what it is about Japanese composers being able to make better symphonies than the continent that invented them, but just take a listen. Holy shit, I'm alive right now. Have you ever thought, as I do, that this game is just too good? That you would really rather be playing a shittier version of the game, such as the engagement of the Chalice Dungeons? I, of course, jest. They're fine, probably, except for half of them, because Bloodborne has an optional system of infinite dungeon generation for all of those who wish to break free of the shackles of good level design. Let's talk about how, and more importantly, why.
Okay, before he goes into this, I feel like I know what he's going to say, and I probably agree with it. I'm agreeing with what I think he's going to say, which is really just saying I agree with myself. I think that the Chalice Dungeons are a good idea and not well executed. They are very much too stale in terms of their level design and how they can put the pieces together. And they get really tedious and not very interesting, extremely repetitive. So the fact that they are randomized doesn't make them actually feel infinite. It makes them feel worse because the building blocks that they are randomized from are in fact very limited. And so there's only so many configurations you're actually going to run into. I think that this came about at a time where level design was very, maybe I shouldn't say level design, where procedural generation was really big and everybody wanted to have the next procedurally generated game. And that's really difficult to do in 3D. Essentially impossible if you want to include like structures and, you know, like traps and things like that. Not completely impossible, but the more complicated it's going to look, the more difficult it is to make it procedural. And they did the best they could. It was kind of bad though, which is why I'm glad that they are these days not trying to do that. Except apparently we have Elden Ring Night Rain coming out, and I feel like it's going to have the same fate. But probably better design. So we'll see.
First of all, Bloodborne has a system of dungeons that everyone shares and dungeons that are random. For my footage, I played the shared dungeons so that you can be guaranteed the pain you witness on screen is mandatory. One of the biggest strengths of Bloodborne is the ability to have interesting and challenging enemy encounters gently rubbed with the blood-stained hands of Miyazaki. But I don't think I have to explain to you how randomizing almost every encounter in the game could be imbalanced. But fortunately, most enemies you encounter in the Chalice dungeons are new to spare British people your wrath, so you instead fight SCP-96. But why are we here? It turns out that the entire city of London was built on a Celtic burial ground, an ancient civilization called the Tumerians who discovered the healing powers of blood and then mysteriously disappeared. Wow, I wonder what happened. This is all cool in theory, but the reality is that most of the time you fight the same 4 enemies, and the first 3 dungeons can be replaced by Simon Says. My cat literally wouldn't notice. The Chalice dungeons are so forgotten that the developers use them to put joke enemies into the game. My favorite is the man who aggressively rolls at you stark naked wearing only his Nikes. The uniqueness also extends to the bosses, and they're actually pretty cool, like Tumerian Descendant, Watchdog, and the 3 overweight men. Do you remember that basic enemy from like 2 levels? He is the boss now. Rom, he is the boss again. The only thing stopping me from throwing myself into a wood chipper is the fact that Mikolash isn't back. And if you're going to have replays, you probably want to make sure that they're actually good. In fact, the bosses are so fucking imbalanced that the Watchdog fight is primarily comprised of instant kill attacks. I beat Sekiro backwards on a keyboard, and this shit is too fucking much. Now, normally that would be all, but the dungeons go deeper. What we have discussed so far is merely the surface, and there is a much darker syndicate lying just below. These places you must never venture, for they are the save edit dungeons, whereby through wizardry, the community are able to conjure up deep, dark chasms and share them with the rest of the world. Of these secrets, there are only 2 that I shall reveal to you, and the first is the Cum Dungeon.
I was gonna say, it's gonna be Cum, isn't it?
And clearly, the Cum Dungeon is the name of the most optimal farming route ever conceived by the fucking cricket people who do this shit, whereby the player enters the chasm of place name and watches as a high-level boss yeets itself off a cliff. Murgo's pig fisting route can give you 10,000 echoes. This gives 83,000. And if you thought that sorcery was bad, it gets much worse. You can insert anything from the game files by save editing a chalice dungeon. Anything. This includes cut and unfinished content from the game that the developers forgot to delete, like this doggo who attacks you with invisible lightning. Overall, the chalice dungeons are bad. They're not actually very fun to play, and yet I love them.
Agreed.
Everyone loves them because they allow us to further explore a
love
long-dead game with the help of a passionate community. Now, before we sign off, I know what you're thinking. Max0r, what about the multiplayer? That I would love to talk about with all the footage I have, but it's dead. If this game releases on PC, and
it better,
then I will talk about the multiplayer extensively. And finally, this
spoilers,
game and
it won't.
This video would not be complete if I didn't talk about the Hunter's Dream.
At most, this game might get a remake a la the Demon Souls remake style, which would be amazing because they wouldn't even have to really do all that much. Just clean up the 60 FPS and then like they could improve the details on some of the areas. Not that they even really need improvement, but you can always make things look prettier, you know?
After all the combat, the battles, and the difficulty of this game, it's nice to have a place to recharge, purchase items, upgrade weapons, and watch as it violently burns to the ground. This is where you'll find German slowly wasting away as his soul remains captive for an eternity, and his doll waifu that he sold his existence to be with. She talks to you, levels you up, offers you advice, and German says you're allowed to have sex with her. When I fell down and felt defeated, she was there to pick me up. When I emoted at her randomly, she pretended to be impressed, and she was there, graciously standing in the background of this one shot that I took of myself. She is our waifu now, and the game is perfect and complete because she is in it. Now excuse me as I engage in the supplementary lore material. Should you get the game, yes, absolutely, I am biased. In fact, you should physically enter Sony's headquarters and demand that it be ported to PC. I will be right there with you. Tasers will not stop me. I would like to thank the corrupt hackers and politicians funneling money into this channel directly from the taxpayer. If you would like to contribute your funds accrued through extensive federal government corruption, you can head to my Patreon to learn more. I would also like to thank the kind denizens of the Mythbusters Smut Discord who sent me half the memes in this video. And as always, thank you for watching.
Okay, honestly, that was a lot of fun, and that was a lot less chaotic than I was expecting. Maybe it helps because I actually know all of the like stuff about Bloodborne, and so it wasn't totally out of the blue. I think I'm going to watch the Elden Ring one as well and release that, you know, in a few days. So let me know if there's other things that you think it would be fun for me to watch, and we'll take it under advisement. Most of the stuff I've been watching on the channel has come from viewer requests, and some of it's just from things I've seen other people reacting to. So have a lovely day. Ta-ta.